What if FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, was assassinated? Now, this particular assassination, out of the three we've discussed, or two others we've discussed so far, would have the greatest outcome on the whole world. Not in terms of it being good, but of it being catastrophic. So, in this particular scenario, FDR, there were two attempted assassinations on his life. One in 1933, before he became president, right before he became president. The other in 1943, with Operation High Jump. The most dangerous man in Europe, Otto Skorzeny, famous for rescuing the dictator of Italy, Benito Mussolini, from the prison that he was held in before he was killed, was tasked with killing the big three, which were the leader of the Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin, the leader of Great Britain, which was Winston Churchill, and the leader of the United States, which was FDR. Of course, in our timeline, the Soviets, quote unquote, stopped the assassination. I mean, obviously, it didn't go through, but they claim to have discovered the plot and to have stopped it. So, what if they hadn't? Well, the event in which Otto was going to kill them at, to blow them up at, was the Tehran Conference, which took place November 28th, 1943 in Iran. The big three were there to discuss opening a second front in Europe. Now, at this time in the war, the Soviets were finally starting to push back. They had completed or began Operation Bakarov, in which they pushed through to, fight back against the Nazis. Down in the south, in Italy, the British and the Americans have jumped onto the island of Sicily, taken it, and then jumped down into the Italian peninsula. And now they're here to discuss opening Second Front, which in our timeline we knew as D-Day, in which they invaded France on June 6th, 1944. But in this scenario, that doesn't happen. On the first day of the Tehran Conference, Otto Skorzeny, who is not stopped by the Soviets, blows up the big three, killing all three of them. This has major consequences for world history onward. The Vice President of the United States at this time was not Harry Truman. FDR had a new Vice President every single election year, or every single term. His Vice President was Henry Wallace, who, from what I've read, was a very weak man, wasn't very charismatic. He just wouldn't be a very good leader for the United States, especially after such a tragedy has occurred, and especially during wartime. In England, a new coalition government would have to take place with another man who isn't as charismatic, especially compared to Churchill, Anthony Eden. But the whole morale of the British populace would absolutely be demolished. I mean, Churchill was really the main thing keeping everyone together. And then finally, the biggest change here is with the Soviet Union. There was no clear successor to Stalin. I mean, in our timeline, Stalin didn't die for another 13 years. And even then, there wasn't a clear successor. There was still infighting after his death 13 years later. So with Stalin abruptly dying in 1943, a civil war would take place in a sense, the same as what happened in 1917, 18, 19 through 21. Uh, this would be between multiple major players, uh, Beria, Malenkov, Zhukov, and Khrushchev. Uh, Two of those who into our timeline would be leaders of the Soviet Union after Stalin. And of course, Zhukov being a hero, even at this point in the war, and leader of the army. Now, with the Soviet Union collapsing, basically, there would be another Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, or to Litovsk, however you say it, which happened all the way back during World War One, in which the Soviets surrendered to the Germans, and the Germans took what is modern day Belarus, Ukraine, and the Baltic states. But I feel like with Hitler being in charge at this time and there not being a king, uh, they would have much higher demands, and the treaty most likely wouldn't last very long. I feel as if the Germans would attack the Soviets again, uh, either the next year or a few years later. But even with the death of the three biggest leaders in the world, really, at this time, and some of the most major figures in history, this does not mean that World War II is won by the Nazis. The Nazis are not going to win this war. There's no way. While they have a lot of manpower, while they have a good economy, they just can't